This is a Hope 1032 podcast.
The next thing I knew, I just heard this terrible sound and he wasn't able to breathe. And kind of the most traumatic part of the situation was that mummy and daddy had lost control. It was my worst fear coming to life in front of me.
Hello, welcome to Undistracted. I'm your host, Laura Bennett, and this is the podcast where we learn from our guests how to be better at building our lives with intention around our passions, our purpose, and deal with some of the stuff that gets in the way of it. Our guest today is Victoria Vanstone, host of Sober Awkward, a comedy podcast following her and a friend as they navigate life post their decision to ditch alcohol. Today we're talking about her book, Mumming, continuing her choice to really open up her life and be vulnerable with the points of weaknesses she finds, the points of hilarity that she finds. In this particular instance, as a mum of three, embarking on a year-long experiment to try to be the perfect mum. Spoiler alert, she finds that perfection is not necessarily the outcome we're after. Let's welcome Victoria to the show. What was happening in your family? How would you describe kind of a day in the life of your family when you first started writing this?
Well, I think I realised that I was turning into my own mum, and all the traits that I promised myself that I would never ever continue. I started to shout a lot and my patience was very, very thin. And I had images of running out the front gate and never coming back, if I'm honest with you. I had three children. I had my third child at 42, and I found the whole thing very, very overwhelming. I think it's something us parents don't talk about that much. We tend to only share the positive sides on the squares on social media, but actually the negative side started to take over, and there was a large percentage of my time that I was spending being annoyed at being a mum, and I knew something had to change.
What made you think there was something wrong with that? Because there'd probably be some parents listening that think shouting's just being a parent, right? Like feeling a little exhausted, that's just being a parent. But what was it that said to you, no, something is up with this?
Well, I have this terrible habit of investigating when I go wrong. It was the same with my drinking habit. I was a massive binge drinker all of my life, hence I have a podcast called Sober Awkward. But if I'm questioning something, I tend to go deep and try and find the answers. And I knew that I didn't want to be that person that was shouting at their kids. And I knew there was better ways of dealing with their behavior. And I thought, right, I can either go on like this and I can keep feeling guilt and shame and not doing anything about it, or I can reach out for some support and start to try and change my own behaviors, because I wanted to feel happy in my house and I wanted to not be that troll that was marching around and slamming doors. And I know that's okay sometimes, but I think I was just doing it a little bit too much.
Did your kids, do you think, feel the effects of those behaviours that you didn't like seeing in yourself?
Absolutely. And I remember as a child myself, when my mum shouted at me, I never ever thought, or maybe I should stop doing that. Maybe I shouldn't steal the chocolates out of the fridge or do all these things that I used to do. I just used to think, oh, you're shouting at me, so therefore you probably hate me. And now I hate you. So I knew that it never worked for me either. But my own impatience was causing me to lose my temper. And I could see it wasn't changing our relationships as a family. It certainly wasn't making them stronger. My relationships with my children were deteriorating to the point where they were starting to shout back. And that's where things, you have to question it, because I knew that I was teaching them bad habits.
Yeah, and you don't want that to just be something else that's passed down the line to the next generation as well.
Exactly. I mean, it was time for me to be the cycle breaker here yet again. And so I spent a year trying to find better ways of parenting, which led me on a disastrous and somewhat adventurous journey into me as a mum and me just generally as a woman. And it was there were some confronting moments, but in the end, I think what I worked out that perhaps, I am different people at different times, and that I hoped that unconditional love, no matter how much I shout, would eventually see me through.
Did you think, though, that having walked the road to sobriety. I mean, congratulations on getting to 7 years or so on that journey now. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Did you think though that having put down the drink, you'd be the perfect parent? Like why that didn't make it all better?
Absolutely. I thought the work was done. I thought, gosh, well, now I'm sober. I'm just like queen of the parents. I thought, gosh, I'm amazing because I'm present and I'm authentic and I can go into a social situation and own who I am and all these other personal development side of things. But actually, it didn't change my parenting massively. Of course, those things do help. And I am, going to influence my children, hopefully, in a better way around alcohol. But there was still other things I was doing things wrong all the time. I'm the mum that once sent her kid to their little kindy just with a block of cheese, and the kindy phoned up and said, "Why has your child got a block of cheese?" I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I think I must have put the wrong box in her bag." But I make mistakes all the time, and sobriety did not change those mistakes. And it had to do with me probably not changing that much in that area of my life, whereas in other areas I was kind of like doing more exercise and being more sociable and changing lots of things. But with parenting, because you're at home and you can't get away from it, as a mums listening would know that it does feel relentless at times, and that I don't think no matter what you do, no whether you're the best parent in the whole world, there are still going to be times where you want to run away. And so it's fine to be sober all the time because I don't want to go back there, but it's difficult to be a happy mummy all the time, that's for sure.
And that's something I'm sure that a lot of listeners, as you say, a lot of parents, you're going to relate to this, right? And that feeling of, I'm getting this wrong, I should be doing this better. What was your definition of what that quote unquote perfect mum, that good mum was meant to look like?
Well, I thought I would be excreting bliss balls and like going to the park with the perfect wraps, the kale sandwiches. I would know all the best sleep techniques. I just thought I would be wearing an apron, doing sewing, knowing when all the school events were on, all the forms would be in on time. I just thought I was going to be the best mum. But actually, like most mums, you have absolutely no idea what parenting consists of until you actually do it. And in fact, until you're probably two kids in, it's like, oh gosh, this is much harder than I thought it was. So yeah, I did find it much more difficult than I imagined, but I thought I would be a prim and proper, Instagrammable, Pinterest perfect mummy with all the right tools in the back of my apron pocket. But that didn't turn out to be who I was at all. I was just a chaotic mess that cried in the Audi car park a lot more often than anybody else.
No, and I'm sure the mums that look like they are the Instagrammable perfect ones with the bliss balls and stuff, they all have digestive issues. Like you just know they do.
Yeah. And I was talking to someone about this the other day. Like, that is such a moment in time, that image. Like, we know as mums, like, even if you get that amazing shot of you in your kitchen, covered in a bit of flour, looking all mummy and like looking all perfect, I know that there is stuff out of that shot that we can't see, which is complete chaos. And I just try and focus on that when I see those pictures and go, I know the truth. I know you're crying on the toilet on your own twice a day.
Just probably feels very validating. But in saying that, you did take some steps to make changes, to start to investigate what was really going on here, what was some of those initial things you started to do to try to work out what was going on?
Well, at the beginning of the book, the reason I started to change was someone ran over to me at my local school and handed me a leaflet and said that there's some free parenting classes. And I think free was a good word for me at the time because I was a bit skint and I knew I was going to get a free pen and maybe a chocolate biscuit. So I was totally in, and I went to these free parenting classes every week thinking that I was probably an all right mum, and then I'd leave and realize I was doing everything wrong. Because if I put my hand up and said, "Oh, so it's not okay to feed them Kinder eggs when you're going around the supermarket to keep them quiet," and the lady was like, "No, that's probably not the best thing to be doing." I was like, "Oh, okay." And all the other mums would put up their hands sort of shyly and ask really good questions. And then I would pop in with some ridiculous question and be put to shame because what I was doing was completely wrong. So I learned in those classes that a lot of my techniques to be a good mum were actually failing and were causing more problems than I could have ever imagined. So that was a really good start to my year last year, this was. And then so I thought, right, well, I've been doing all this wrong. Maybe there's some other things that I can implement in my life alongside these parenting classes that will help me really, succeed at being this better mummy. So I started an exercise class. I started boxing, which was good because used to pound a box of wine and then I just pounded a bag, which was much better.
Much better.
And then I started a writing group. I tried to make friends as an adult, which I find extremely awkward, and loads of other. Stopped dieting. That was another one because I realized my language around diets and body image was negative in my house. And so lots of little kind of 10x's that I was going throughout my life. So I started at a 10 and I think I ended up at about a 70 by the time I finished the book. But I think there's still 30% of me that needs a bit of work. But I definitely got better at parenting. But it was so weird as I went through the year and tried all these different ways of accentuating my parenting skills. I discovered that actually, after all of it, I wasn't as bad as mum as I thought I was. And when I started out writing the book, funnily enough, this only happened during the writing process, was that I was writing a book about me being a total failure. And so that generally that's kind of my angle that I take with everything I do with the sobriety as well, is like, look at me, look how awful I am. You can no way be as bad as me, so you should feel all right. That's kind of always my message. But what happened was throughout writing the book and seeing my parenting in black and white on the pages of my memoir was that the love is always there throughout the book and throughout my life and throughout my household. No matter what goes wrong, no matter how much I shout, no matter how badly sometimes I want to run away. There is a point in the book where I run away to Italy,
Brilliant
which was
idea.
a really, really good idea. Yeah. But that's okay. And again, there are these moments in time where things do go wrong. But generally, if you were to look into my window and you'd see a family where, love was spilling out of all of those tea towel drawers that are all full up. So, yeah, I think actually for anyone who's questioning any of their behaviors, writing a book is a very, very therapeutic sort of process because I've written two memoirs now, and if I ever have any problems, I can literally go back and look at them like sort of self-help books of my life and go, look, remember when you made this mistake and you actually reached out and got support. And there's a moment in the book where my son Freddie nearly passes away on a trip, and to look back on all of those scenes and all of my changes and my progression as a mum, even though they're really minor sort of little steps in the right direction, on a whole, the journey had massive benefit to me. And it's really a wonderful experience to be able to see it and have this book. Like I wouldn't even care if that book was even not published. Luckily it is, but just to have that memory of our this time in our lives when I've got three young children, it's hard to remember all that stuff, which is why we all overshare it and everything at the moment. But to have this book as a log of our lives and a log of our family is just going to be a wonderful thing in the future.
Yeah, tell us what happened that day with Freddie, because it fits into or taps into, I think, some of parents' worst fears.
Absolutely. And funnily enough, my worst fear as a mother was that one of my children would choke. And I was on a camper van trip in Perth and I handed my son a Chupa Chup. He'd never had one before. And the next thing I knew, I just heard this terrible sound and he wasn't able to breathe. And we pulled over. We were in a camper van. We were in the middle of nowhere. We were in a town called Geraldton in Western Australia. We didn't know anyone and we couldn't revive him. That was kind of the most traumatic part of the situation, was that mummy and daddy had lost control and we couldn't do anything to bring him back to life. He was blue and floppy and it went on for quite a long time. And so, yeah, it was my worst fear coming to life in front of me. Like it was everything that any parent would absolutely hate just happening right before my eyes. And it's funny how, they say that things slow down in those terrible times. And it was absolutely true. I felt like the whole experience was going on for about an hour when it was probably only 5 to 10 minutes. I actually had to run out into the street and call for help, and it was extremely confronting and scary and frightening, and all of those panic filled emotions in a really short period of time. And my body was shaking, and I thought I was a parent witnessing the death of their child. And some amazing builders that were working nearby heard my cry, came and helped us, and actually managed to revive him and somehow get him breathing again. So yeah, it was a really traumatic time, which had a lot of fallout for me personally and for everybody in my family, because not only did I nearly see my son die, but my kids, other kids did as well. And it caused a lot of anxiety, and it made me very paranoid and made me really confront the fragility of life, really. So it was a very, very difficult time. And it's amazing how I know about myself, probably from writing my books now, that sometimes I need help and sometimes I need somebody outside of my family to step in, a therapist, and go, look, this is what's going on with you. And actually, you've got PTSD from, nearly seeing your child die, and that's very normal. And I think as soon as she normalized it for me and normalized my fear and pain, I was like, okay, this is a normal feeling to feel, and that's okay. I'm not going to have anxiety or panic attacks for the rest of my life. But unfortunately, the tendrils of anxiety sort of fed through into my son, and he ended up being very, very paranoid about losing his brother and sister, because, that's what had played out before him. So, yeah, it was a difficult time. And as a family, there had to be a lot of sit down chats and everybody understanding that Freddie was going to be okay and that we were just going to get on with life. But it was great to write that as well, and to put myself back in that moment. I think I needed to, because I had emotionally been avoiding going back there because I was scared to think about it, because I just had this image of my holding my child that couldn't breathe. So yeah, it's been a tough write at some stages. And in my last book, I talked about my tsunami experiences as well. So it's really interesting diving into the moments of life that you actually probably want to forget about.
But normalizing the emotion in them, because in those two especially, there's obviously, like, it's a really traumatic kind of impact emotionally, but there is also something that spills into these other parts of life where you realize, I suppose, there's a level of it's okay to feel that way. And like, that's something that comes up so much, whether it's in parenting or other parts of life. Just having somebody else to acknowledge what you're going through is something that you haven't been the only person to ever face. This is okay. That can make such a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. You just reminded me of a part of the book, the mumming book, that there's a point in that when I'm sitting in the school car park and I've absolutely had enough. I am withdrawn and upset, and I think I'd had an argument with my daughter, and I just remember getting to school early and sitting in the car park like many mums do all over Australia every single day of the week probably, and just bawling my eyes out, just not knowing what to do and feeling like everything I was doing was wrong and feeling terribly guilty. And a friend of mine, my friend Nat, knocked on the door, and she just handed me a paper bag that had a chocolate bar in it and a little note that just said, sometimes parenting is fucked. And I was like, my gosh, that is all I needed to hear. I didn't need someone telling me you should or you could or what you should do now and do this and do that. I just needed someone to understand. And I think as mums, I've really written this book as a love letter to all the mums out there who struggle, because sometimes you just need to know that other mums are struggling too. You don't need to know who's doing it perfectly and who's doing it right and who's, wearing the apron with the flower on their face. I don't want to know those people. I want to know someone who is getting it wrong like me, to make me feel not so bad about myself. And I remember reading that note and just going, okay, I am not in this alone. I am in the trenches with all the other mums who are finding things difficult and just about making it through. And I think the fact is that we do make it through, and we make it through every single day, and we make our comebacks very, very quickly. There might be 1 minute on the toilet on tears, and then 5 minutes later we're up doing lunches and getting them ready for school. So it is kind of an acknowledgement of those mums that are struggling, my book.
Where do you draw the optimism that you have from to know that there is going to be that comeback, to know that you are going to get it right sometimes?
I think it is to do with living in the present a little bit more. And that's something that I'm learning myself with my sobriety as well. Like I have to be in the moment. And sometimes that can be tough. It's like a craving. You have to sort of sit with your emotions and push on through them. And I like to find the humor in life. Like my grandmother, her favorite saying was, "A dirty mind is a joy forever." I think it's actually Oscar Wilde. I do write it in the book, but she had this kind of way of seeing the joy in the negativity and just going, look, life can be crazy sometimes, but we're all here, we're all okay. And even if it's hard, we do manage to get through it. And so I do try and find the humor in the more difficult moments in life. And that kind of keeps me going and keeps me motivated. And when people email me, if they've read the book or listened to my podcast, they always say the same thing. I've listened to so many sobriety podcasts, I've read so many books about it, but yours kept me going because I didn't know that I needed humor to get me through. Because my drinking stories are funny, my parenting stories are funny. If you can see it as being funny, it does tend to take the shame and guilt off your failures a little bit. And you can just go, well, at least I've got a good story now. Every time my kids do something stupid now, I've got my little my phone notebook out going, okay, it's just good content.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Life is content. And you know there's a therapist, though, who's going to be listening saying, you know that your humor's a coping mechanism, Victoria.
Oh God, yes, yeah. Oh yeah, I totally know that. Yeah, I probably need some more therapy. She's probably right. And I'm up for it. Yeah, give me a discount. I've probably had so much now that I'm probably going to get two for one.
Honestly, if all the coping mechanisms to have, though, I like humor, I would lean into it. It makes the whole thing a whole lot more fun, if nothing else. But I love that there's a line actually where you say that learning is almost giving up, right? That you want to keep tackling the experiences of parenting with a belief that it's not going to go wrong, even though you know that you can. Like that particular line came out of a family dinner. You were trying to have the kids sit up straight and do things perfectly. Like, talk us through those experiences where parenting is going a little bit wrong in a public space, because I think that dynamic is so uncomfortable.
Well, I've been at all sorts of misdemeanors when my children have taken their clothes off in public. You know, they swear in public. They usually get something, ruin something or destroy or break something in a restaurant. That usually is something that happens when we go out. So in the book, there's a kind of stage that I'm still waiting to get to. It hasn't happened. The book's been out it comes out on the 1st of May. So I still haven't reached this stage, if anyone's wondering that's listening. I'm always hoping that it's going to go well. Like, I just want to go to a restaurant and sit around and everyone sit at the table and act in a kind of nice, almost demure way is my fantasy. I just want everyone to be perfect. And of course, it never ever happens. I never reach this stage. There's always something going wrong. Somebody always needs the toilet. Somebody doesn't like their dinner and we have to order again. Yeah, it's just absolute chaos. They are getting older, so I'm hoping that that's going to change things a little bit. And actually, I hope that one day we will be able to go to a nice restaurant. I think I'm not at that stage yet, but also I have to accept that this is just because I have young kids. And I think it's my fault that I try and force them into growing up before their time. Like, do I really want them to get to that stage? Because what does that stage means? It means that they're getting older and they're behaving really nicely, and it means they're probably going to move out soon when they're 18. And it's like, I don't actually want them to be older. I want them to stay perfect as they are and chaotic and lovely. So when I am in those moments now in restaurants and everything's kind of falling apart around me, I do have to try and think about, well, this is what it is at the moment. This is the now for me. And if I can accept that, then maybe the future, when they won't leave, I won't have any regrets. I'll just know that I enjoyed every moment, even if it was quite shit sometimes.
What was the impact that trip to Italy that you spoke about a little while back, taking this solo kind of trip, having that space, what kind of impact did it have on the way that you were able to approach your parenting on the other side?
Well, even with that, there's guilt and shame involved, isn't there? I've parented, I've carried 3 children, I've brought them up, I've been an amazing mum sometimes. And I felt terribly guilty that I was planning this little week away with one of my best mates to Italy. So there's shame in everything a mum does. You can't ever quite get it right. But I thought, I need a break because I'm not doing this well. And I'm going to save up some money and I'm actually going to do something for me. And honestly, it was wonderful. Like just being on a plane on my own was like a trip to the Maldives because no one was shouting at me, no one was demanding anything. There wasn't any elbows in my ribs or, arguments with the air stewardesses. It was just me on my own watching movies. It was pure bliss. And the time away, it just gave me some space to understand that I'm okay. And luckily, my mate that I went with, she's a psychiatrist, so that kind of helped as well. So if we went on any big walks, like we sort of put the world to rights, and she sort of cured all my issues in one stroll. So that was great. But yeah, I think sometimes, I hate to say it, but time away from your children, it might not 100% be the right thing to do all the time, but 1 week away for me to sort of recalibrate and get some energy back into my parenting instead of just being totally trodden all over, which I had been for quite a long time. It felt wonderful.
Well, and mums talk a lot about having their individual identity alongside what you're doing as a parent. And surely some of that time away is about preserving a little bit of that.
And also, I don't have the outlet that a lot of mums do. I can't remember me before parenting by just getting wasted and having a drink and going, oh, yeah, I remember I was the party girl. And so I have to find different ways of sort of letting go and being myself and not my entire identity being dissolved into motherhood, because I am still my own person and I do have an identity outside of my family. And that can be hard to show people. And it can be hard to let go of, because I think a lot of mums use, mummy wine as an escape and an escape from the mundanity of being a mum sometimes. And I totally get it. I did it myself for many years. So I have to find other ways to find myself again. And even I call it a rage walk that I go on every day now. Like if I'm having moments where I'm struggling as a mum and I'm feeling totally imperfect and I have no coping mechanisms at all, I go and strut it out on the beach. It's the cheaper equivalent of taking a trip to Italy, where I just go and march on the beach and just let all my problems dissolve and just look at the ocean and just have a time out. That's all that was really, that trip. It was just a time out to remember who I am individually away from my family.
There's also something really powerful, I think, in your ability within the book and in some of the stories that you tell to come back to that realization that this is what you want. You're a mum who wants to be a mum. You're a mum who loves having kids. Like, how do you find that again and remind yourself of that in some of the times where you're not feeling it in the moment?
Honestly, it's not easy. Like my husband is much more patient than me. So he will let me go into my bedroom for a couple of hours and just watch some terrible reality television so that I can switch my brain off and just go, right, I'm out. Sometimes I say to him, like, I'm not coping right now and I'm out and I just have to get out of the situation. And it isn't perfect. Like I've written a book about parenting. It is no way near a self-help book or a book written by an expert. I'm kind of like trying to be the anti-expert and say that, look, I know you probably don't parent like it said you should in some of the books, but actually, as long as you love them, that's okay. And you do have to find different ways to kind of remember who you were. And if that's shutting yourself off in a bedroom for a few hours or banging your head against the fridge door, well, then so be it.
Yeah, it's a very comforting read, I have to say that much, Victoria, and so funny. I encourage people to really have a read of Mumming because you're going to relate to it, you're going to laugh, you're going to feel so much better and have a heck of a lot of fun along the way. So thank you so much for writing Mumming and thank you for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Undistracted. Would love to hear what you thought of it. Maybe your own mumming stories as well. You can reach out, email undistracted@hope1032.com.au or find me on Instagram at laura.bennett_. And until next time, enjoy living this undistracted life.